Welcome to the Part Ace channel. Today, we explain Prophets Judges chapter 8 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We're picking up this story right after one of the most famous, just truly unbelievable military victories in history. Picture this. Gideon, armed with literally nothing but horns, torches, and exactly 300 men, has just routed a massive, overwhelming army of Midianites. I mean, the enemy camp is in total chaos, and they are fleeing for their lives. But as we're about to see today, actually winning the battle, well, that's really only half the story.
So that brings us to a really crucial question about human nature. What happens after the underdog actually wins the war? How does a humble, victorious leader act when the dust settles? In this chapter, we aren't just looking at military strategy anymore. We're getting a deeply revealing, almost uncomfortable look at the psychology of a leader who's dealing with the messy, complicated aftermath of a massive success. The adrenaline's fading, exhaustion is setting in, and the harsh political realities of leading the Israelites are crashing on Gideon. We're going to walk through this verse by verse, uncovering exactly who, what, where, and why, without skipping a single detail.
Section 1. Diplomacy with the Ephraimites.
We start off in verses 1 through 3 with some incredibly high tension. Before Gideon can even finish chasing down the fleeing enemy, the powerful men of Ephraim show up, and they are furious. They confront him for leaving them out of the initial assault. Now, you have to remember, the Ephraimites were one of the most powerful and proud tribes in all of Israel, and they are deeply, deeply offended. They ask him sharply, "Why have you treated us like this? Why didn't you call us when you went to fight Midian?" They feel insulted, right? They were left out, and they want their share of the glory. But Gideon doesn't argue back. Instead, he diffuses their anger with just immense political tact. He flatters them. He says, "What have I now done in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezar?" Now, Abiezar is Gideon's own small family clan. So he's essentially saying, hey, the grapes you drop on the ground, your leftovers, are better than my family's entire harvest. He reminds them that they're the ones who just captured and executed the two Midianite princes, Oreb and Zeb. By elevating their contribution and totally downplaying his own, he instantly diffuses their anger. It is a masterclass in diplomacy.
Section 2. Pursuit, Exhaustion, and Betrayal.
Let's move into the next phase of our story, and you'll notice the narrative arc noticeably barkens here. Gideon is continuing his pursuit of the fleeing enemy kings Zebah and Zalmunna. This marks a real shift from the united front of the Israelites into a story of deep internal division and just physical desperation. Gideon is down to just 300 men, and the text emphasizes their condition in verse 4 with this beautiful, haunting phrase, "They were faint, yet pursuing." Think about what that practically means for a second. These 300 men have been up all night, fighting, running, shouting. They are completely out of energy, they are starving and entirely exhausted. Yet their willpower pushes them forward to finish the job. They flat out refuse to stop until those two remaining Midianite kings are captured. So it's crucial to trace this geographic pursuit. They cross the Jordan River, moving out of their immediate homeland and heading into the eastern territories. As they push forward, Gideon arrives at the Israelite city of Succoth, and later a place called Penuel. Keep in mind, these are his own countrymen. Gideon begs the officials of these cities for some simple loaves of bread to feed his starving troops. He tells them, "I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." He fully expects his brethren to support the army that is out there fighting for their collective freedom.
But tragically, officials in both Succoth and Penuel completely betray him. They mockingly refuse to help. The princes of Succoth look at Gideon's exhausted 300 men and essentially say, "Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thy power, that we should give bread unto thine army?" Basically, do you already have them? They are acting purely out of fear and political calculation. See, they just don't believe Gideon can actually win against the 15,000 enemy troops that are still out there. They figure if they help Gideon now, the Midianite kings will just come back later and slaughter their cities. So they turn their backs on their own people.
Notice the stark contrast in leadership that emerges here. Remember how gently Gideon handled those angry Ephraimites just a few verses ago? Well, facing rejection from Succoth and Penuel, an angry Gideon completely changes his tune. He threatens his own people with brutal violence. To Succoth he promises, "I will tear your flesh with desert thorns and briars." And to Penuel he vows, "When I return in triumph, I will tear down this tower." He's no longer the humble diplomat we saw earlier. He is rapidly becoming a hardened, vengeful commander.
Section 3. Victory and Vengeance. Making good on his pursuit, Gideon travels by the route of the nomads, taking an unexpected path to avoid detection, and he pushes on to Karkor. And there, he successfully surprises the remaining 15,000 enemy troops. The enemy army is completely routed, and Gideon captures the two Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna, alive. So, the external threat to Israel is finally crushed. But, upon his victorious return, Gideon fully transforms into a vengeful conqueror. On his way back, he captures a young man from Succoth, who writes down the names of the 77 officials and elders of the city. Now, this detail shows us how organized these cities were, but it also provides Gideon with a literal hit list. Gideon returns to Succoth, shows them the captured kings as proof of his victory, and then systematically tortures those 77 elders with desert thorns, exactly as he promised. He then goes to Penuel, pulls down their defensive tower, and goes even further by killing the men of the city. He is brutally executing his own Israelite brethren simply for their lack of faith and support.
This vengeance culminates when Gideon turns his attention to the captured kings, Zebah and Zalmunna. He asks them about some men they had killed over at Mount Tabor. The kings proudly reply that those men looked like princes, men just like Gideon. And that's when Gideon reveals that those men were actually his own flesh and blood, the sons of his very own mother. This is a massive revelation. It shows us that Gideon's pursuit was driven, at least in part, by a personal blood vendetta, not just a divine calling. He orders his eldest son, Jether, to kill them as a way to humiliate the kings, but the boy is terrified. Defiant to the very end, the kings utter these dramatic final words, "Rise thou and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength." So Gideon steps forward, executes them himself, and then takes the crescent ornaments right off their camels' necks as trophies.
Section 4. Refusing the crown.
Following this brutal, decisive victory, the grateful Israelites come to a massive conclusion. For them, the era of temporary judges just isn't enough anymore. They are so incredibly impressed by Gideon's strength that they say to him in verse 22, "Rule thou over us, both thou and thy son's son also." They are literally offering Gideon a permanent, hereditary monarchy over the entire nation. They want a king. Now, Gideon gives what seems to be a perfect, incredibly humble refusal. He tells them exactly what a faithful Israelite leader should say: "I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you, the Lord shall rule over you." He insists that God alone should be the true king of Israel, adhering strictly to the covenant established at Mount Sinai. On paper, it is the absolute perfect answer.
Section 5. The Golden Snare. However, this pious moment is immediately undercut by a strange material request that ultimately seals his complex and, frankly, tragic legacy. Right after turning down the formal title of king, Gideon asks the people for a favor. He says, "I would make a request of you, that you would give me every man the earrings of his spoil." The text notes that the defeated enemy, being Ishmaelites and Midianites, wore heavy gold earrings. Well, the people gladly agree. They spread out a garment, and everyone throws in a gold earring from their plunder. The sheer weight of this collected gold is staggering, 1,700 shekels of gold. To put that into modern terms, that is roughly 43 pounds of solid gold. And get this, that didn't even include the royal ornaments, the pendants, the purple garments of the kings, or the chains from the camels. Gideon is amassing the staggering wealth of a king, even if he supposedly rejected the title.
So what does he do with all this? He uses this massive wealth to forge a golden ephod. Now you might be wondering, what exactly is an ephod? Traditionally, an ephod was a sacred linen garment worn by the high priest, meant to seek God's guidance. But here, Gideon makes one out of solid gold and sets it up in his own hometown of Ophrah. It was likely meant as a memorial of the victory, but it disastrously shifts the people's focus. The text says all of Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it. This is a very clear, harsh metaphor for spiritual unfaithfulness. They treated this shiny gold object like an idol. And the text explicitly tells us it became a snare, a literal deadly trap to Gideon and his entire family.
Section 6. A Tragic, Forgotten Legacy. The Final Years.
We conclude the chapter by looking at the bleak aftermath. Now, on the surface, things actually look pretty good. Midian is subdued, and the land enjoys 40 solid years of peace during Gideon's lifetime. Gideon retires to his home, but he lives very much like the king he claimed he didn't want to be. He takes many wives, fathers 70 sons, and even has a concubine in the city of Shechem who bears him a son named Abimelech. Finally, Gideon dies at a good old age and is buried in the tomb of his father. But his final years reveal a deep human frailty. Look at what happens the literal minute he dies. The Israelites instantly revert to idolatry, running right back to worship the Baals. They set up Baal Berith, which ironically means Lord of the Covenant, as their false god. They completely forgot the true Lord who rescued them from their enemies. And tragically, they failed to show any kindness or loyalty to the family of Gideon despite all the immense good he had done for them. Because Gideon had set up that golden ephod, he had fundamentally failed to lead them in true, lasting spiritual faithfulness.
So let's wrap up with this provocative thought, a practical life lesson we can all take away from this chapter. We must always examine the aftermath of our victories, because a single uncorrected flaw, whether that's pride, a thirst for vengeance, or in Gideon's case, a desire for a golden memorial, can so easily unravel a lifetime of success. We learn right here that true leadership requires consistent character all the way to the very end, not just during the brilliant moment of triumph. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.